Hello, my name is Matt, and I tend to use YouTube a lot to do repairs on my vehicles. I have a 2003 K3500 four-wheel drive Chevrolet that needs front brake rotors changed on it, and I got on YouTube and looked for some explanation on how to go about doing it, and I couldn't find it, so I went ahead and winged it, and went ahead and make this video to maybe help somebody else who has the same problem I had looking at it originally, not knowing exactly how to take it apart. So with that being said, we'll get started here. Alright, your front end here consists of three major parts. Basically, you have an outer hub, you have your disc itself, and then on the inside of that there's actually another hub that consists of a bearing and your sensor for your four-wheel drive, since this is an electronic shift four-wheel drive. It's not like the old locking hubs, it's all electronic. So what you have to do is you basically have to take what I'm calling the outer hub, whether or not that's the right terminology or not, I don't know, but you have to take these nuts off. These are pressed in studs to your inner hub. Once that's done, this disc will actually come off fairly easy once I remove my caliper and my brake assembly. So we're going to get started. I'm actually using an impact gun. Fortunately, I have the use of one. It's an electric. You need to use a shallow socket on the inside, and you can just start taking each nut off as you go. Some of these are pretty tough. You may have to end up using a breaker bar, depending on the quality of your gun, or basically how tight they were put on originally. So here we go. Obviously that's a pretty tough one. We're going to end up having to manually bust it loose. Better quality impact gun, you may be able to bust it loose, but I'll show you a little trick I was using. Basically what we're doing is we're using a standard breaker bar. We're getting attached to the unit like so. Actually using my jack handle to go against the studs, wedging it against the ground, and then I grab my breaker bar and bust it loose that away. As you heard that, it's pretty daggone tight. Now we can switch back over to the easy gun. And that's your last one coming off there. At this point, this hub is loose. Now, the only reason it's not falling off because of the rust and stuff from the age of the truck. Actually, it came off pretty easy. But as you can see, this is your inner hub. Inside of here, there's actually bearings. If you had to do your, say, your drive axles for the front, you would undo this nut, but we don't have to go there for this type of repair. My next move is to remove all my brake assembly here. We went ahead and pulled the sensor wire loose because this caliper is rather heavy. and you want to secure it so you don't damage your brake line. If it was to fall, you'd end up replacing that brake line, so we're going to try to avoid that. Okay, went ahead and removed this bracket that holds the brake line, and we turned the wheels also to gain access to the bolts back here, because you have two bolts that hold this whole assembly, and then the sub-assembly of the brake shoes and caliper actually attaches to this. When you pull this off, like I said, be prepared. It's rather heavy. You need to protect your brake line. You don't want to have to be replacing that unnecessarily too. With that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. These are all metric stuff on this truck, this 2003 Chevrolet. So you want to make sure you have your proper tools prior to getting started, because I started on my driver's side, realized I didn't have some of the things, so I had to actually borrow a couple sockets from a friend of mine. So we'll go ahead and get started here. You've got your caliper assembly, which is this one here. We'll find the right socket here for it. Let's see where we go. Where'd it go? Okay. Thank you. This is the right one. Turn around and start busting that loose. You also have a lower one that you have to get to. Loose enough, hopefully we can get it out by hand here. Sure enough. Top one here, same thing. These are what your caliper actually slides back and forth. Caliper guide pins, slide pins. A lot of different names for them. Like I said, I'm not a professional auto mechanic. I'm just a guy who tends to fix his own vehicles. More time than money per se. Tell you what, let me go ahead and take the other assembly off, and maybe we'll have better luck getting it apart. It should be this guy here. Sure enough, okay. Helps to have a variety of sockets, different shallows and so forth, just because it's an awkward area to be working in. Notice everything is kind of hanging here loose now. The whole unit's starting to try to move. Pretty substantial bolt holds the assembly on. During reassembly, I tend to use anti-seize, because I tend to keep my vehicles for a fairly long time, so most than likely I'll be doing this again one day. Okay. That being said, as I said, it all comes apart in one unit. However, the caliper section here will separate so you can do your brakes. As you can see, these are worn down fairly well. We've got a lot of use out of them. The other side actually wore to the point it ate the rotor up, and as you can see, my rotor on this truck is not in good shape anyway. This truck tends to sit longer than it is used due to we use it for heavy hauling, and basically that's all we use it for. So we'll just grab this rotor and it will come directly off the studs. Just help it along, and there's a removed rotor. Okay, as you can see, I've got the two pieces apart. It just takes a little bit of persuasion because your pistons in your caliper, which actually move this whole assembly back and forth on your rotor, are sticking all the way out due to the low brake liners. In order to fix this, to get it ready for the new shoes installed, we'll have to actually push these pistons back inside, being careful not to mess the dust shields up. I always tend to just use a brake shoe with a C-clamp. Poor man's version of a caliper compressor, but it works fine. Just be careful as you do it, and work slow pushing them in. You don't want to force them in. It'll cause your brake fluid to basically overflow in your reservoir, and you just don't want to, put that much pressure. Just easily squeeze it back together. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and separate the old brakes out of this one carrier here. Basically, it consists of 4 pieces. It's got some slide guides at the top and bottom. They'll come with your new brakes that you get. You see them in this bag right here. Basically, you have to just remove these things. It takes a little persuasion because they've been on the truck for a while. So you can just slide them out like so, get them out like so. I like to lay them the way they came out, only because you do have what they call squealers that are brake indicators. If you notice right here, that's a brake indicator. When the pad gets low enough, it should start hitting your rotor, give you a warning sign before you damage your rotor. Unfortunately, we didn't catch ours in time on the driver's side, and that's what caused the damage. So where it would have been a easier repair, cheaper repair, we kind of messed up and missed the signs. So start hearing your brakes squealing, it's a good thing to go ahead and take a look at them, change them out. These just pop off, pretty simple. Like I said, I lay them so I know how to put them right back on. Pretty self-explanatory. They just clip on. No real big deal. Got a little bit of rust build up here. It's really not going to hurt anything. It doesn't do anything. So we're going to go ahead and put these back on the way they came off. Let's see. This one should go to the top. It just pops in like so. Clips in. Clips in. Done. Okay. Same on the bottom here. Flip it over. Clips on, just like so. And then that's done. So those are installed now. And your new shoes, that's where these areas right here slide. They slide on those areas back and forth. New ones, you go in at a little bit of an angle. You can physically pull them to the spot they need to be. A little bit light tap, so I'm using the wooden side of the hammer as not to damage the shoe or anything. Put them in place like so. We'll do the same with this shoe as well. So you go at a pretty harsh angle, get it started, and then just work it out to the area it needs to be in. These need to be fairly wide from the get-go because they're going to have to fit over our new rotor. So, whoops, went a little bit too far on that one. I can get it started right back on. Like I said, you can physically slide those for the most part. Sometimes a little persuasion with a hammer is not a bad thing, just don't get crazy. Okay, as far as the carrier here goes for the shoes, it's basically done, ready to go back together. As I mentioned earlier, I tend to use an old shoe and old pad shoe, turn around and use a C-clamp and put it on the caliper back to compress my pistons back in. I mean, they do make a specialized tool for this, but you can do it this way. Most you know, backyard mechanics like myself will tend to do something like this instead, because especially tools like that tend to be on the expensive side. Just I slowly compress my pistons here. And like I said, I give it a couple seconds in between twisting to make sure they're going back. And they're slowly going back. You figure all the brake fluid in this front has to be pushed all the way through the lines back to the reservoir. I don't normally open up bleeders to do anything like this, because of course that would allow air to get into the system, and then you'd have to do a full bleed front and back. Usually you can get away with not having to do that as long as you don't open up the system. They're slowly going back in. As you can see, you're not seeing as much caliper sticking out. They will basically get to where they're almost flush. You can tell. It'll just physically get to a point where you can't turn your C-clamp. Okay, we're all the way back in. It's not going to go any further. There's no point in trying to. As you can see, take this shoe out of the way. As you can see, you got your pistons back down deep. You can see your dust cover is kind of poking out a little bit. You need to just make sure that's in the right position so it does not get pinched when you put your shoe assembly back in. Always check the condition of your dust covers, because any foreign debris gets in there that can cause issues with sticky calipers, and that's gonna, you know, wear your brakes out faster and so forth. Okay, we're at a point now that we can go ahead and start reassembling the brake system here. First thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the new rotor onto the studs where it belongs. Push it on back. It's going to be loose until we actually put this outer hub on, because it basically compresses everything on. As you can see, like that. We'll put a couple nuts on to secure it in place while I turn around and load the rest of them. That way everything can't come falling off at my feet. Really put one on, that's good enough. It's going to hold everything good enough for now. I will go ahead and load all these nuts. I'll use the impact to snug them, and even snugging them I will work in a circular pattern as to not put one on tighter than the other, because these will be torqued eventually before I call this complete. There is a torque setting on it. I have yet to actually find it, but I'm sure there's a torque setting that the factory wants you to be at. And with that being said, you're going to use a crosshatch pattern when you finally do that, like you would any cylinder head or anything that you possibly would do. That way you pull everything down true, and you won't have a wobble effect or anything like that. So we get all these loaded, and then we'll use the impact gun. But like I said, just get them snug. We'll do the final torque manually. I'll basically show you how you do that when I actually get the info I need on it. Extension, proper socket, like I said, I'm just snugging them now. I'm not doing real tightening at all, just snugging them, running them down to where they're snug. Notice I'm going 180 apart from the get-go. That way I pull up halfway snug, and it should be even too. Once you get the first pattern down, do it 4 points, you should be fine. Be able to snug them the rest of the way. Be a little bit more critical with a torque wrench at that point. But this will get you the general idea. And all of them are snugged down, so really that part of it's fine. Now it's time to actually load the caliper up and get it put in position. Okay, what I normally do is I'll stick this on first and get the bolts lined up. Like I said, you have to have your pads to the outer reaches at this point, because brand new thick pads, you're going to be at the widest point. Fit all this together, get it, do it with your hand for sure. You might have to shake it around a little bit. Do not ever force any bolt. At that point you could be cross-threading. I do have NICs on these, like I said before. With the amount of time I keep my vehicles, I'll probably have to service this again, and this will just make it a little bit easier taking it apart next time. I'll go ahead and Get this thing tightened up. I'd imagine if you had the lift and all the conveniences of a actual shop, you could probably knock this job out in 2 hours after you've had the experience of doing it. Of course, for you to get this job done, I bet you we'd be pushing, you know, probably into the $800 range between parts and labor. So a couple hours out of my time is a whole lot easier on my pocketbook. We go ahead and put these are the caliper assembly with the pistons in it, and it will go down over top just like so. Now the only thing you need to be aware of is you had little rubber boots here for your guides that need to be kind of persuaded to go in the right way. Easy enough to do, just got to work it a little bit and play with it, and you'll be able to get it right back where it needs to be with no problem. Go ahead and get your bottom side in before you try to tighten anything. That way you have the little bit of wiggle action you need to make it correct. Kind of hard to see what I'm doing back there, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you pull it apart, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I just hand tighten them, and that's at this point to make sure they're going in with no real resistance. That's telling me that everything's lined up and it's all going to end up working out good. Kind of manipulating that dust shield I was telling you about, or boot, however you want to call it, on this pin right now. That way it's over top of where it needs to be, and everything's protected from the weather and road grime that you're going to encounter with your vehicle. Okay, put a good tighten on those. Good tightening on that one, and pretty much that concludes. You got to do your little button up. You got your brake line that fits down. Put your proper bolt back in that to hold it down. Again, I'll use just a little bit of anti-seize on that in case it's got to get pulled again. It's a little 10mm head. I'm using a 1/2-inch drive socket, so keep in mind, leverage, you don't want to over tighten things like this. You'll break them off, and cause you more grief than it's worth. Just a nice little snug. Okay. Clips go back in place. Up here they got a nice little push down clip, and that pretty much concludes, other than torquing everything down. Yeah, that's a special designed ratchet that has a indicator on it that will tell you how many pounds, foot-pounds of torque you're putting on each stud. You want them according to manufacturer specs, and you want to do it evenly, and that's really all you need to look out for. I thank you for watching the video. Hopefully you've learned something to help you, and have a good day.